somebody. Be very careful with these when you're cleaning the Dr. Blades. Extreme care is required. They make Kevlar gloves. I highly recommend them. But be very careful with this. The way this assembly fits in, my bevel always goes facing away from the Dr. Blade. If you're running beveled Dr. Blades, the bevel should face away from the Analox roll. This is important because if the bevel faces toward the Analox roll, ink's going to slide up through there, and you don't want to do that. Also in this unit, we have this front bar is where I like to hold it, and it'll just sit in. As long as my bevel's face the right way, I can just slide it in very simply. Just engage it. Don't come down none at all. Just engage it. Get it to where it's in the screw holes. Where it won't pull up, and now you're ready to go. This is the correct way to set up your stations on the Mark Andy 2200. No matter what press you're running, there's a way that should be done. Make sure everybody learns that way and sticks to it. Next thing I'm ready to do now is I'm ready to load this station. Here again, I simply slide it in, slide it forward, and push down my lock. When I lock it in, now to make sure everything's proper, I'll cut my Analox roll on. When my Analox roll turns, I know that I'm seated and good to go. I can now cut my Analox roll off. What I have here is I have my control panels. This is a dual modular unit right here. This controls my left-hand print station and my right-hand print station. This, first off, your joystick. Over to the left is jog. You have to hold it. When you let go, it stops. To the right is idle. There's only one speed for idle. It's set right now at 50 foot a minute. Good speed to set your impression on. And then this is run. Run, you can go to run from idle anytime you want to. When you go to run, you can control your speed then by your speed control panel at the front of the press. And then straight down is stop. Right here, I have my print. When I go to idle, I want to cut my print on and it'll engage. When I cut it off, it disengages. This is my Analox roll. When I cut my Analox roll on, my Analox roll will turn. I want my Analox rolls turning the whole time I have ink in there. I don't want them to sit still and let ink dry up on them. So always make sure you check your Analox rolls and make sure they're turning. And here again, this is your lock mechanism that locks the station in. Once I have all this locked in and ready to go, I'm now ready to pour ink and continue on with my setup. Now that we've got everything put together to print this color, a couple of things I want to discuss with you now is exactly what it takes to print Perfect Impression. You'll hear me talk about Perfect Impression a lot. I know a lot of people believe there is no such thing as Perfect Impression, and I guess that's true, but we would like to get as close to it as we can, and I'll show you a couple of tricks that allow us to do that. Starting out as close to Perfect Impression is one of the key ways to running a good, clean, quality product and setting it up with a very minimum amount of waste. In Perfect Impression, no matter what type of press you run, is fairly simple to set. I'm going to show you a little trick that I do here all the time to show people Perfect Impression. Lock in my station. I'm going to pull my print rod out, okay? Simply lay it up here. Cut my emergency stop off. I don't have to worry about anything. Now I'm ready to show you Perfect Impression. Perfect Impression simply means that I'm going to print the same exact amount of ink on one side as I print on the other side. It also means that I'm going to pick up the same amount of ink from one side as I do the other. So the idea here is to pick up the same amount of ink equally across your plate and lay down the same amount of ink as you pick up. You will often hear me through the training talk about never cleaning your plates, running low percentage of waste. This is the starting point of doing that. If I don't set Perfect Impression, I guarantee you're going to have a trashy plate once you start running. And it's very easy to set a quality job up, it looked good for the sign-off, and once you get to running, everything starts trashing up. More than anything, that's from lack of Perfect Impression. So real simply right now on this press, I'll show you how to set perfect impression. All right, that's perfect impression, no print rod or anything in there. And the reason why that's perfect impression is simply this. I have a print anvil, okay? Some people call it a pressure anvil. This, along with the Analox roll, are two round cylinders sitting there side by side like that. When I take and simply put a round cylinder on top of them, I automatically form perfect impression with gravity. I make sure everything's the same from side to side. And when I put two round cylinders on top under one round cylinder, then I'm going to get a perfect impression all the way across. Remember, if I lined up these perfectly, and now I have that set up perfectly, my next step is just simply lining up my holes here. And once I line the holes up completely, I should be fine. Now what I want to do is I want to be able to load this rod up simply with one hand. If I cannot get this rod to load up one hand, then it's not lined up right. Remember, it's metal to metal. These are very tight fits. If it's not right, it won't work. Beating it, hammering it, all of this kind of stuff does absolutely no good so whatever. If I can't push it over and lock it in like so, then I'm in trouble. Once I get it over, I want to back off. And the reason I back off on it is simply this. I want to set my own impression, okay? Now, yeah, that is close to perfect impression, but I like to make sure that I set everything myself. This will be the next thing we're showing you is setting perfect impression when you're setting your print. But it's important that after I slide that rod through, lock it in, that I back off a little bit. Now, I don't want to back off so much that my gears disengage. I just want to back off enough so that I don't burn a plate or that my print don't come on printing when I start setting impression. So remember, back off just a little bit. Now I have all my print cylinders loaded in the press, which we've shown you how to do that. I've got my color sequence set. I've got my ink pans in. I've got my Analox rolls all turning and my Dr. Blade set. I'm ready to put my print in. Because we have 3 dies down here converting, this is very rare, but what I'll do is I'll set my print to my dies, and I'll do this with my first color. That way I can come back and register my other colors to it and be in the die. So the first thing I want to do is pull my colors down to my dies. Normally if I'm running 1 die or maybe even 2, I'll just rotate my die into place and go. But on this case, because we're running so many dies, I'm going to pull my print to my die. First thing I want to do right here is I'm going to go to idle. Once I go to idle, I want to cut my print on. As I go to set my print, I want to adjust it evenly, and I want to do it as quick as possible. I want to float it out. And I'm looking at my print bearers. That's what I watch the most. Now I've got it floated out. And here again, I know we've explained this, but simply floating out means putting pressure on it over here, then coming down over here. I can't just go down without coming up. I have to move both heads till I float it out and hit that perfect impression. And you can do this in about 8 to 10 feet if you watch it accurately. Now what I'm going to do, normally I would just set my other colors to this, but now I need this to get down to my dies so I can see where I'm hitting. So I'm going to run it all the way down to my die station. Put a little speed on it. Okay, I now have my first color down. Now I can take my sample, line it up to my die, and see how much further I need to move. We're looking at about 6 teeth. So I'll simply come down here, lift this handle, rotate, and count the teeth as I do it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If I lift that up all the way, disengage it, and it spins free, I'll be lost, just so you'll know. Gonna do the same thing, but so that I know I got a good break in my print, I'm gonna cut my print off for a second, so I have 5 feet of unprinted stock go through. Then I want to come down here and check it again as it comes through. Here again, you use a little bit more stock doing it this way, but we're talking about 40, 50 feet, maybe more. I think you use more resetting your dies. Okay, I think I got lucky and got pretty close. You know, a lot of people out there will say, well, why don't you just put your print in and then throw your dies on top of it? Here again, remember, I don't want to clean up 5 colors if one of these dies have a problem. We have to make sure the converting is able to be done first. So with that being kept in mind, and I'm running 4 other die cuts, this is the best way. Now I'll take my sample again, and I'm going to measure again. I'm just simply looking at my yellow, lining up my die, and I just get really lucky sometimes. That's ready to go. Now what I'm going to do is simply lay all of my other colors on top of my yellow, because then I'll know that my registration is close to my die. I'm now going to my magenta. I can cut my yellow off. You know, one thing people make mistakes of, and we run our jobs here, we do not clean plates while we're running or anything, but one frequent mistake people make is if you leave this print on and you're jogging and idling and it's picking up ink and then not laying it down because you're stopping, that ink's drying on your plate and it becomes trash and it forces you to clean the plate. You don't want to have to do that. So I often cut off the print when I don't need it. Right now I'm just going to be registering colors together. Pretty easy to do. Follow it down. Remember, you want to go gap to gap. All right, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go down and start setting impression and pulling all my colors together. Just floating it out. Roll it around the tooth. Okay, now I'm just going to cut all my colors on. Make sure everything lines up right. Look at it as I go through. It's important that I work from this color front. I don't want to ever move this registration. I want to always move everything to this color. Right here, everything looks real well. Up through here, everything's right on. Let's bump this a little bit up.